Hello and welcome back for today's tutorial. My name is Mark and I am your host. Today I would like to present you my project structure, which I use in official software products or also in customer projects. Let's start right away with the separation of the initialization of the Bootstrap component and component controller, as well as the actual software product within webapp. The following four files, index.html, index.js, component and manifest are assigned to the WebContent folder. We can now create these together, and afterwards I would like to give a short explanation to the individual files. Index.html file holds the SAPUI5 Bootstrap. The Bootstrap script tells the browser about important resources that needs to be loaded for the application to run. It also initializes the SAPUI5 runtime as soon as the script is loaded and executed by the browser. The index.js file will be called only when the resource loading is successful. The init event triggers when the bootstrapping is successful, and the index.js file is called in the callback function for the init event. The content of the manifest file is a configuration object in JavaScript object notation format that contains all global application settings and parameters. The manifest file is called the descriptor for applications, components, and libraries, and is also referred to as descriptor or app descriptor when used for applications. The Component.js file is the component controller and provides the runtime metadata and the component methods. In productive use, the file is called component.preload.js. This file contains all the code of your application in a minified version. We now create together the four project folders, controller, CSS, EITN, and view, which are basically in use in every project. The view in the model view controller concept is responsible for defining and rendering the UI. In SAPUI5, there are four types of views, which are JavaScript view, XML view, HTML view, and JavaScript object notation view. Among all these views, the most common is the XML view. The controller is responsible for responding to the user input and perform interactions on the view as well as the back-end data. The controller can receive and validate the input and then perform the business operation that modifies the state of the data model. Every view has its own controller, although it is not mandatory for in view to have a controller. Sometimes we need to define some more fine granular layouts, and this is when we can use the flexibility of CSS by adding custom style classes to controls and style them as we like. The CSS can be loaded in the resources section in the manifest file. Internationalization means that all the texts of an application are available in one central location, and that a translator can easily translate all the text into different languages. The ITN is the abbreviation for internationalization. We now create four more subfolders, which serve the clarity of the project, but are mostly not needed in smaller applications. These would be formatter, fragment, model, and resources. Formatters are used to define the formatting of data on the UI, while data types work in both directions. They format the data on the UI and parse and validate user input that is entered. You can either use standard formatters and data types or define your own custom objects. We recommend to use a separate formatter.js file that groups the formatters and makes them globally available in your app. You can then load the formatters in any controller by defining a dependency and instantiating the formatter file in a formatter variable. Fragments are used similar as XML views, but fragments do not have a controller on their own. They are not a control, they are not part of the UI tree, and they have no representation in HTML. Because fragments do not have their own controllers, this requires the fragments to be used within a view which does have a controller. I use the folder models as a repository for my local JavaScript object notation files, which for example contain a predefined format for certain model instances or can also contain the definitions for tabs of a tab control. Inside resources, I store JavaScript files, which I need in different places in my current project. These can be helper functions like conversion routines or also controller files, which I use as superclass in several files at the same time to not have to write redundant functions. Thanks for watching and see you next time.